It ain't that deep. So there was a white lady that I subscribed to, and I listened to some of her content, and she admitted to something that I thought was very odd. She was talking about male emotion and female emotion, and she had said that female emotion doesn't really run that deep, but it is more central to their person, and it's felt right here. And she was saying that male emotion runs much deeper and it's not that important to males. It runs much deeper than women. So I kind of tie that into just how the dating world is going and how the average value of the average man, or the value of the average man, is basically it's dwindling, it's going down, whereas the value of the average woman is in a surplus. It's probably the highest it's ever been, even though it's always been high. Uh, Granted, you have different industries, different businesses exploiting this to the greatest sense. You have OnlyFans, which is making money off of the loneliness of men. You have campsites, you have corn sites making money off of the same thing. They make money off of the fact that the average man can't get access to intimacy in any way, whether it's physical, emotional, spiritual, blah, blah, blah. Generally speaking, right? So then we have that tied in with the loneliness epidemic. Obviously, we got a whole breadth of issues on both sides because you have a bunch of women walking around, infinite options. They don't know who to pick, right? They have this dilemma, this dilemma, this tyranny of choice where they don't know who to choose. And that's causing them the greatest pain and suffering. Their pain and suffering is that things are too easy. Um, and it's funny, maybe you think that's it's not fair, and I can kind of agree with the idea of that, but looking at it from their perspective, I could also see how that would be difficult because you're you wouldn't have a point of reference for what to choose because you've had choice all along and it's been too I don't know, it's almost like the fact that it's easy means you can't really tell what is of substance. Even when you see it, you don't know what is of substance. You just look at the next shiniest thing. And you're kind of like this very short term kind of person, like, ooh, a piece of candy, ooh, a piece of candy. Now, with guys, they're kind of obviously this dynamic has kind of been talked about by a lot of different people. But with guys, it's like they're like in a desert, right? And it's like once they see a good source of water, they're going to know what is a good source of water because they've been looking for water all along and they've had a lot of time to think about what kind of water they want ideally, right? Whereas a woman, she didn't have to think about it ideally. She thought about it as it came along, right? So that means most of her thinking wasn't really long term. It was in the moment. Most things with women are in the moment. I've noticed that for sure. For certain, I was at a club. I was talking to an eight. She was really attractive, and she liked me. So she actually asked me for my number. But then I ended up calling her. I think I called her the next day. I don't remember. But pretty much whatever attraction or whatever was going on that time was in that moment. It wasn't in the next moment. It wasn't in the next moment. A lot of times, guys, we kind of mix that up. We think that we can just go to the next moment and she'll be right there with us, but she could be in a completely different state. So another thing I've noticed online, and I do this sometimes too, where I'll interact with a female in a comment section, and they'll say something, and it'll be like kind of short-sighted, where it's like, well, that's not really the full picture, or that's not really the full breadth of the thing that you're speaking about there. Um, and so I'll go on this rant and I'll type and I'll comment, thinking, oh, if I make this elaborate comment, maybe she'll understand. But then you have a guy who like he'll he'll try to explain to a woman like a reason why something is and isn't in the dating sphere or just in general or how something makes them feel or how men feel about a certain thing. Here's the thing. None of that really matters to them. It's really just a petty game. Um, but the other thing is, yeah, your feelings are hurt and stuff, but oh, man, when you really think about it, we can't really, I guess, generally speaking, it's not that deep. Um, I understand you think it is, but on the other side, they're not thinking it's that deep, and they can't even like comprehend your issues. They don't know the struggles that guys go through. They don't know even how to fathom it. So if you want to talk to someone about it, just talk to your male friends. Talk to the ones that understand. Obviously, don't talk to the ones that are obviously uh, inhaling fish scent. Right? They're just kind of stuck in there. Don't talk to them. Talk to guys that actually understand the true nature of humans, but specifically uh, the nature of women, right? Because it's kind of this thing that's slowly being revealed to men in the Western sphere, men in the United States, men in UK, men in Africa, men in Brazil. We're slowly starting to realize, oh, wait a minute, this is why we had these laws. This is why we had these rules and ideas to separate and make the sexes do what they were doing, right? It's all coming full circle because we're going to this equality thing and it's not really working out. Obviously, the more equality we get, the stronger and the more powerful the women become because they already have a power that makes them powerful, right? So that it's not balanced. So the yin and yang of it all is just that, oh, okay, we give them more yang and then they become more powerful than us, but then they don't want us because the energies aren't balanced. So obviously that doesn't work. But generally speaking, especially when you see them, I was talking to this chick about that's a different topic, right? Because I was talking to her about security because she was saying security is super important to women. And she was saying, oh, this happens to women and this happens to women. And I was listening and I was giving the due sympathy and everything, right? And I was saying, yeah, that's definitely an issue. But then I noticed when it kind of turned into when I went back to, we went from there to male issues. The issues weren't really all that serious anymore. And she specifically told me, well, I don't understand why I should feel bad about that. And that just sounds like a him problem, right? I kind of blew my mind. This happened recently. It was like it was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I was at some little get together with my friend. And when I heard it, I couldn't really believe it. I was like, I can't believe I just heard that. Like, is this really what goes on in the mind of a woman? It's like they don't have empathy for men. It's like if she said a similar thing about a pet, right? About a dog, I don't think she'd be capable of it. I think women might even give more empathy and understanding to small creatures than they do to men. Now, the ones in their family is kind of different, right? Because if it's your brother or your cousin or something like that, maybe it ties into the emotion. So if she has big enough emotional connection to you, then she'll lend the empathy and understanding. I don't know. That's a thought. That's an idea. Um, so even the girlfriend that you had and she broke up with you, and the wife who did this and did that, and she said she loved you and you said you loved her. Your love was different, and her love was different, and it wasn't that deep. Now, a lot of times it's not that deep because a lot of times when they leave, it doesn't really hurt them all that much, and they just move on super quickly, right? Now, I could be wrong in some instances. Some instances, you could have the girl, she comes back, and she like tries to beg the guy back. My thing is like, why does that happen after the fact? Why is it after she does this rash thing, then she realizes, and then of course someone would say, oh, it's because they're emotionally driven creatures. Like, okay, got it. But If you had to leave, if you had to lose a person in order to realize you wanted them, was it really that deep? Was it as deep as the person who was willing to hold on, make the sacrifices, and try to? I was talking to my mother actually about the girl I was dating, and eventually would become my fiance, and we were pretty much about to get married. I was talking to her about the situation, and what's interesting is she ended up making it my fault. It was the most fascinating thing ever, right? She was like, "Oh well, you know how you are," and then she just broke up with you and cheated on you and stuff like that. And in the back of my head, I'm like, "Wow, this is it's amazing, right? Because you think that you're the good person, the person who's trying to hold on to the relationship and keep it together, keep it from going bad, but then to even like have your female relatives, like your mother, right, explain to you that, oh, first off, I have like the explanation is like, oh, I have empathy for this person that you were dating, which isn't bad, but it's, because she's a woman. But then I don't know, it was just this sick feeling where it was like, wow, I don't like this because that's the person that just quickly monkey branched to the next person and cheated essentially, but then moved on. And then I'm the person who was trying to fight for the relationship. That rubbed me pretty wrong. I'm not gonna lie. Um, Obviously, it's deep for me, but the idea of this video is that it's not really all that deep for the other side. For women, it's not that deep. So if they break up with you, um, even when they profess their love for you and stuff, they're really just like when they say I love you, they're saying you have enough value for me. It's not really love. It's like partly even less, but it's also like saying like, oh, I see you as having enough value in this moment, but your value can fluctuate quite wildly, right? Um, so if she says I love you and she says I want you to say I love you back, yeah, you can say it back, but just understand, uh, she's a female creature, right? Like she's a female human, you're male human, so your idea of love is going to be more self-sacrificing. It's going to have a lot more to it. Whereas hers is going to be, well, I can leave you in a drop of a hat if I just don't like you anymore. So, I don't know. Take that for what it's worth. I know you have a lot of women who'll be like, oh, I want the guy to say I love you first. Um, I don't think it's a good idea for a guy to say that because our version of love is way different than a female's version of love. Like women's version of love is it's not that deep. Doesn't really run that deep. I remember I was at UNT and there's this massive player. He was like known within the school's fraternity and sororities. He was a cool guy. He actually took me under his wing in a lot of ways and taught me a lot about women and taught me a lot about things. We would just chat on the side every now and then. Um, I would tell him my situation and how stuff is working, and he would tell me what he's doing. It didn't really go all that long, but I remember he said that, and this is a guy who was going through 50, 60, 100, just as many as he could, as he wanted. He was like a natural alpha, all those kind of things, right? So he told me that women love, but men love deeper. Like it's a deeper love, and I believe him. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why guys guard their feelings so deeply is that women, that could almost be another topic. Um, Women don't really cherish that kind of thing the way that they could, like just in general. Um, Reason why is because it's not that deep. See what I'm saying? Like it's not that important. It becomes this petty game, but then it also, when they figure out that the guy does love them, they see it as a form of power. So they see love as a form of power. The guy sees love as just love. He sees love for love's sake. So you have idealistic implications for the same thing, but then you also have on the guy side, but then you have the pragmatic application of someone loving you and you being able to use that as leverage for what you want. So it's like an opportunistic type of love, but it's not a love at the higher levels of love. Because if you have a sacrificial level of love and you're being opportunistic about it, it's not sacrificial. It's like a lower, less potent form of love. It's like a very selfish form of it. Like a child, right? Because children, yeah, they say they love their parents, but it's probably the same thing. Because when a child goes, "I love you, mom," maybe that child is saying, "Hey, I value my mom," but they value their mom because of what their mom gives them. Their mom makes them feel good inside. Their mom protects them and feeds them and stuff like that. So in a way, it's probably the same kind of love. Women probably have that same kind of love, uh, being that the mother will protect the child with her life, and that being the difference between the two, that being the highest form of love, and that being pretty much essentially the same love that a man has for a woman. But also that meaning that a woman would only be able to understand the male's version of love through her children. Now, I think in the Bible it says the woman is saved through the children. I don't exactly know 100% what it was meaning by that, but I think women, their capacity to love their children, being akin to a man loving a woman, is extremely essential for our society, and it's extremely essential for their understanding of everything altogether. So when you get women who never had a child, they've never experienced loving someone at the highest level. Um, Maybe the exception would be women who only have fallen in love with one guy and have only been with one or two guys or something like that. Um, but even still, if they're falling in love with one guy, they're still experiencing love from a down ladder, right? So yeah, it ain't that deep.